Welcome to the Contractors Edge, the show where we break down the strategies, tactics, and tools that you need to grow your home service business. Whether you're in a truck or at the office, we're here to give you the edge that you need to win. I'm Mike Stiers.
I'm Anthony Brown.
So in this episode, it's part three, our focus on KPIs. These are the numbers that drive your company's growth. Today we're going to focus on sales KPIs specifically. But before we dive in, I wanted to start us off with a quick recap. I'm going to tackle episode 3. Anthony's going to handle episode 4. But we really just kind of, for those that are tuning in for the first time, or if you didn't catch all of these episodes in this series, we want to make sure that you're on the same page with us. So we'll just do some quick hitters. Episode 3 really focused on marketing and advertising KPIs. We really feel like these are the fundamentals. It really sets the floor. It's the thing that everyone focuses on, even though we feel that every part of this series is incredibly important.
Yes.
We'll just go ahead and line these out. So first thing that we look at is return on ad spend. A 5-to-1 ratio is going to be your floor. The goal is to 10x. Anything lower than a 5x is really going to start eating your profit. So, business owners, you really need to have this consideration in mind. When we look at an average cost per lead, in a lot of our scenarios, we lean back into like foundation repair, crawl space, roofing. And when you're looking at like a company generated lead, which you're generating for yourself, or you're working with an agency, those are healthy around that 250 per. We don't really like to get into lead aggregator discussions because the CPL, or cost per lead, from an aggregator is significantly lower because they're capturing that lead and they're giving it to all of your favorite competitors. So we know the cost is lower, but we also know that the quality is lower. We'll look at the marketing percentage of revenue. We have some fundamentals that kind of tie into everything that we do. We're very methodical in that, and we say that 7% is to maintain, 10% is to grow, and then 13% is really what we see as like dominating a market, especially as like private equity, as they're jumping into a space. They typically drive up these lead costs. So just something to keep in mind. And then to wrap up, marketing KPIs, we always consider first-party data. We specifically lean into call rail. We feel this protects the data accuracy, gives you transparency. Call rail obviously gives you the ability to listen to calls, look at transcripts, have AI assists, and then send that attribution back to the platforms where you're advertising to true data so you can optimize and improve the efficiency.
In episode 4, we talked about call center KPIs. And like Mike said, each division of this process, I'll say, they are all important. So the big KPIs to measure on the call center side is missed call rate. So you want to maintain under 5% missed call rate. And the follow-up to that is, of those qualified leads, you're setting 90% of those calls that come in, and then you're running 95% of those appointments that you're able to set. So like a 5% cancellation. Another really good kind of benchmark to aim for is having an under 5-minute speed to lead response time. This triples the chance of you booking them onto your schedule. Another thing to keep in mind is make sure that you are measuring your call center as well. So auditing 1 in 10 calls to make sure that you understand the experience that your customers are having with your CSRs.
Oh, that's great. And we're going to encourage you, go back and listen to episode 3 and episode 4. There's so much that goes into that. We actually received some really great feedback from one of our clients. Anthony had a great meeting with them today. And they actually listened and they took notes, through episode 4. They asked clarifying questions. There are things that they want to implement to improve their processes. And for us, this is incredibly exciting because we don't want to sit here and be talking heads. We really want to try to give you actionable insights, tips, tools, and tactics that you can implement and really help your business grow. So, we're not, just trying to sit here and spin our wheels. These are different things that we've learned from experience. We're working with so many different clients over the years, and anytime that we can provide actionable insights, is really what we want to get out there with you. So, Anthony, with that, let's get us to the edge of the week.
The edge of the week. So the edge of the week this week is ride-alongs. So owners often struggle with low bid and closing rates, right? Because they can't see or hear what really happens in the home. A lot of the times when you're bringing on new salespeople, you do ride-alongs for their first few appointments, maybe until they've made a couple of sales, and then it's off to the races. What can happen, or what tends to happen, is basically slippage from your model or your program, where people start to revise the script. You want people to make it their own, but how far are they going, right? So it's impossible to ride along on every appointment, but there is support that you can lean into for that. One of them is advanced field recording technology. It acts like a ride-along sales manager with an AI brain. There are a few options that you can pursue. The ones that we're familiar with are Rilla, Ciro, and SalesAsk. Each of these record the appointment. It transcribes that appointment for you. It uses AI to make sure that the presentation that your rep is doing matches your standards. So, think, did they ask for the sale at the end? Did they mention our financing? Did they broach the promotion that we're doing for this season? Anything like that. And it will give you like a score, essentially. And it's really good because it doesn't just score the people who need coaching, it's scoring the people who are excelling as well. And so it can be really used to identify what benefits there are to a certain person's pitch. And you'll be able to incorporate that into the whole team. So the takeaway for these platforms, for this support, is that additional visibility helps you coach faster. The result of having this coaching raises your bid rates, adds 3 to 5 points to your close rate in a single quarter. And then based on the information that Ciro, Rilla, and SalesAsk are reporting, Ciro is showing a 36% higher close rate with 30% less turnover for their sales reps and 10 times faster coaching cycles for teams that adopt their tool. Rilla is reporting 33% increase in close rates and 100% increase in average ticket size. SalesAsk, 27% increase in the closing rates, 25% increase in an average ticket size, and 20% median revenue growth for the companies that are utilizing their tools. So a lot of different benefits to using this to help refine your system, to help train your team, and just to get that visibility that is necessary to be able to make these adjustments, right?
Yeah, it's crazy to think, and it's funny because I go back. I mean, even if you went back, let's say 2020, 2021, we didn't hear about Rilla and Ciro and SalesAsk, but with the advancements in technology and AI, for me, I mean, just thinking business owner, and then even prior to as the marketing director in a home service company, to have the visibility, I think, of so many different ways. And I want the listeners to think about this too. There are so many different ways that you can utilize these platforms, these services. If you've got, a sales manager in place, that sales manager can't be everywhere. But if that sales manager now has this visibility, and the AI is running through what these processes are. And I remember the first time that we got a demo on one of these products, and you had met these folks at one of the shows that we were exhibiting and sponsoring at, and I'm like, man, this is super sweet. Like, what business owner wouldn't want this? And it's funny, and talking to some of our clients, we've had some that have adopted it and seen great success. We have had others that have adopted it, and they had their sales reps get really upset. Like, you're just watching me, Big Brother's watching me. And it's like, wait, but we need this transparency. And my feeling is, if I were a sales representative, and if I'm new to the program, I want to be inside of this and I want to see what the best guys are doing. I want to see how they're in the home, what they're saying, what they're spending time on, so that I learn immediately. Because it's one thing to like, you get this playbook, right? And this is the sales processes, and this is what we do for the inspection. This is how we build a needs assessment. It's another to literally either audibly be able to listen to the conversations or just read these AI summaries and see where these folks have like done really good or done
Mm-hmm.
really bad and kind of like hone your sales skill. But I know, you could get on a tear and everything's going great, but then you kind of just hit a bump and you can't figure out what's going on. Well, then to go back and have something saying, well, Mike, you didn't, talk about this and you spent too much time on this, and then you can improve from there. I'm just thinking like as a sales rep, the goal is to go out there and help the homeowner get the sales and obviously have money that you can take home. So these tools that the companies are investing in, it's not Big Brother watching you. It is literally a 24/7 sales manager that is helping you perfect your craft and
I
providing you
don't.
transparency to the all-stars. I mean, I'm a competitive guy and I want to know what the winners are doing because
Mm-hmm.
I want to see how I can implement that into my bag. So,
Well, what's interesting to me, Mike, is I never understand the reluctance from the sales reps themselves, because the same way we talk about doing like the math game, and it's like if you can improve your numbers 2%, 1%, 3%, whatever it is, what does that mean for the bottom line for the business? That same exercise is true for individual salespeople. Like your income, as long as there's commission in your compensation, then you increasing your own closing rate by 1, 2, 3, 4% is going to increase your overall revenue. And like if you're thinking about that on a month to month thing, if you are getting, 1, 2, 3% higher close rates every single month for a year, think about what that does to your yearly income, right? So
yeah.
it, this this tool should be like the most excitement should be coming from the sales team, not even from leadership or management. It should be coming from the sales team who want to figure out why, let's just say Brad, right? Why is Brad double my sales revenue? What can I do to my process to get to Brad's numbers, right? And you use this system to identify where you can make those changes and make those improvements. And I do get that, like, hey, you're being recorded. Guys, this is a ruler, okay? Contractors record everything when they're doing projects. This is the same thing. It's just for salespeople. You have to have a way to measure something, right? This is just giving you a more sophisticated tool.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's exciting. This is one of the advancements in technology that, if I were running a home service company, it would be something that I would bring in. And, there's another side for the marketeers in this, and, business owners should think about this as well. If you're utilizing any of these platforms, you now have transparency into the terminology that a homeowner uses, the way that they're
Yes.
describing the problems. You can actually begin to look for very specific trends and you can identify, maybe the way that they describe a problem. Well, that's great because now it might be how they were searching, like I
Mhm.
have this problem. Oh, okay. Well, I know we've talked about it internally, creating campaigns based on, what you're seeing, and how a homeowner describes it so that you're more relevant to them, because we often get stuck in these fields where we're just
Mhm.
talking about this technical terminology that a homeowner has no idea unless they've already got a previous estimate and inspection.
Mhm.
They're referring to that or have experience in the industry, in some
Well,
way, shape, or form.
it,
But outside of that, I mean, like talk like the homeowner, be
yeah.
on their same level. Use that in your marketing and advertising materials. I mean, it's like really cool little breadcrumbs that are left around for you to kind of scoop up and improve.
It reminds me of garage lintel repair, where it's like,
Yes.
are there homeowners who really know that term? And it's like, how did they describe that? They're like, oh, the garage beam repair, or
Yeah.
like things like that. So you though that visibility into it, because for things that are kind of undefined to homeowners, they're going to make up their own words.
Yes, they
And
are.
then those are going to
Absolutely.
become trends that you can pick up and you can get the edge pun intended, over your competitors.
But boom. Nicely done, Anthony. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to take us on to the main dish. So here we're going to talk about KPIs. And on the sales side, these are KPIs that, if they don't already matter to your company, pull out your notebook and
Mm-hmm.
take some notes. Because what happens is we're going to give you some percentage points essentially that you really need to shoot for. And in the instance that you start to see things improve, you should certainly pay attention to it. If you see
Yes.
things decline, I mean, I love your stoplight analogy. This is another
Mm-hmm.
one of those, where you've got the green, the yellow, the red. So we're going to start out with the bid rate. And I know you had brought this up in a previous podcast. It's something that I even want our agency to pay much more attention to, because this I'm I it's funny when you brought it up, I started to think about it and I was like, man, you know what? I did see some instances where individuals were being graded based on their close percentage. So if they went out and they saw, oh man, this is going to be too high of an estimate, and it's going to mess up
Oh,
my
I
close
hate this so
percentage.
much.
Yeah. So, and this is bad. And this is where obviously in the edge of the week, you've provided us with transparency. So we now know when the inspection's performed, the conversations is
Mm-hmm.
happening with the homeowner and what they're potentially proposing, are they given a bid?
Mm-hmm.
Look, this is the reality. You're paying to generate an opportunity. You're working hard to get the opportunity on the schedule. Now you paid for windshield time. The last thing you need is a sales rep going out there and like blowing off an opportunity. So for the
Mm-hmm.
bid rate, we're looking for 90%. So 9 out of 10 leads that you're running, you need to give, a bid to. And you've got to, produce a quality quote, provide the explanation. Don't blow it off. You've got to give this thing like I know a lot of people don't want to provide, a bit in the home, and we hear about the soft close and everything else. Guess what? Private equity is going to eat your dinner, and they are one call close. They're paying a ridiculous amount of money to get every opportunity they possibly can. They are bidding on
They
everything. It doesn't matter if they go in and they know the person needs a complete waterproofing solution. They will bid a sump pump to stake that job, and
they
that customer is
invited
now
you to
theirs.
their home to provide that estimate. What,
Mhm.
like that 1 in 10 for that, like we'll let you off the hook for that one, right? That 1 in 10 is because they didn't understand that the problem wasn't severe, right?
Yes.
The other
Yep.
9 people need some type of solution. So if you aren't finding a way to offer them that solution, it better be because it just isn't a service that you offer, right? It better be because they misunderstood what the problem was. Otherwise, why would you not pitch them your services? It makes no sense to me. Um, and I understand it. Some clients, some companies, they want to not come across as the pushy salesperson, right? Person doing what they were asked to do is not pushy. I'm sorry. So
Yeah.
if they brought you out to their home and said, "I am
Yes.
looking to get an estimate for a repair on my home," offering them the estimate is not pushy.
Yep.
If they say, "Hey, I need some time to think about this," that would be your first opportunity to push. And also, I am encouraging you guys, do at least one push while you're there. Don't consistently, don't chase it for forever. Give them a reason to say yes now rather than later, right? And especially if we're talking about these act of God businesses, damage to the home, things that could hurt their home even more, and the stability of it, which could increase the cost of repair in the future. That is a reason to give a little bit of pushback. Handle
Yep.
one or two of their objections and then get out of the way. But you gotta bid. You've got to.
Oh yeah. It's funny, like being a sports fan, I think about, if you play the scenario of baseball, right? So if you're not getting the at bat, so that's the appointment, right?
Mm-hmm.
The appointment is the at bat. So now we're at bat. If I can't get that bat off my shoulder, I'm never going to make contact with the ball. How do I even expect that? So
Mm-hmm.
you got to take that swing, and
Mm-hmm.
if you're scared of rejection, you're probably in the wrong line of business and service at this
Yeah.
point. But as you said, homeowner has you out. They've asked you to, basically perform an inspection. If it's a service that you can, handle, a problem that you can solve, then they do want you to give them a quote. And I understand walking away from bad scenarios. If you go into a home and it's a job that you're like, oh man, this is going to be risky. I don't
Hmm.
know if I want to put that out there. In most cases, the sales representatives have already been prepared and, they understand what's in scope and what's out of scope.
Hmm.
So that's why you have that 10% tolerance. But you should be finding an opportunity in each of these, scenarios where a homeowner asks you out because the call center has already verified that the problem can relate to the solution. Now they're never perfect, but
Hmm.
pretty darn close. So, take that swing, 90%, bid rate. Let's give it a run. Next is the close rate. And,
Hmm.
the close rate, we talk, it's 30%, in these scenarios for home services specifically. Home improvement, you typically see that close percentage, go down. And sometimes it's in the high teens, low 20s, but it's a much higher average ticket. It's not something that's a necessity. It's
Hmm.
more of a luxury. And so
Right.
we do understand that give and take. But on the home service side, they have an issue, they call you, you've given it a pitch, you pitch 90%, you should close 30%, of those. And we talk about like improving your one close techniques, and that can happen with scripting. Obviously, it happens with practice. There's many other options, that we'll kind of get into as we go through these that will help improve that close, percentage.
Hmm.
But you can't get in there if you're closing below 30%. That's a problem. You might want to look at what your average ticket or average quote is. Each company typically looks at what that average, ticket is. And in our scenario, we're going to lean
Hmm.
into the $10,000, average ticket. So what we do see is if somebody comes in and they quote a $30,000 job, but the
Hmm.
company's average is right around 10,000 for their core services, the likelihood of closing that is typically a little bit lower. Not always, but
Hmm.
sometimes lower. But then you've got that opposite, scenario where
Hmm.
the average ticket comes in, and I do want to just prepare people because we've seen this where all of a sudden 1 month the client's average ticket goes down to like 7K, but they're normally at 10K. Well, then we look back, and for this instance, we'll just talk, the waterproofer and foundation repair. So they got a ton of rain and they're closing at a much higher percentage. So, maybe it's 35% this month, but the average ticket's 7K. What happened? Well, when you start to look into the granular details, you find you're out there selling, sump pumps and battery backups. And so that's going to drag that down. But now, you've got this individual. This is now, your customer. The home is your customer.
Hmm.
You've got future opportunities for upsells and referrals and, maybe repeat service. But those are just some scenarios that kind of play hand in hand. So we do kind of see that scale, the higher
Hmm.
ticket closes at a lower percentage. The lower ticket closes at a higher percentage. If you're seeing a few months, and I know you have shared this with me, Anthony, where we've had like a client kind of come in and we've established the average for performance, everything's looking good, and then all of a sudden one, maybe two, possibly 3 months in a
Three
row, that
months.
average ticket just dives. Well, that's where the concern is only pinpointing one or two of these KPIs. And that's why you need that whole
Yes.
measurement sheet. Because if guys know that you're more focused on the close percentage, they're gonna, be selective in the bids they provide. They're gonna pitch what they can close so that, now they can brag about that. That's why you have to have that sales goal. So every sales rep is assigned a sales goal, plus they've got the KPIs to get them there. And those KPIs are exactly what they are: key performance indicators. They let you know if it's the green light, yellow light, or red light.
Hmm.
And, each provides an opportunity to celebrate or an opportunity for coaching. So
One
the
thing that I want to, before we go down some more of these numbers, remember if you're coming in under what we're calling like the golden ratios or the targets, don't look at this as something to like feel down about. That should be something that like, boils your blood in a good way, right? This is opportunity. I say this in almost every episode, but these are the opportunities for you to improve things without putting more money into the business. So if you can get your close rate up, if you can get your average ticket up, if you can get your cancellation down, all of these things are just revenue streamlining back into your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I love how you always take that back because the listeners should hear exactly what you're saying. We're not out there saying go spend more. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're hitting all of these KPIs that we provide, or you're in a different industry and you establish those KPIs and you're hitting those marks, what happens is your marketing percentage comes down, your
Yes.
return on ad spend goes up, and then that affords you the ability to, yes, put more into marketing and advertising
Mm-hmm.
because you're seeing your machine perform better. And
Yes.
if you start off and you're like, oh man, we're at like 13%, marketing spend, but you establish these KPIs, you'll see that as you start to hit these marks and you get the improvement, that percentage comes down. All of a sudden it's
Mm-hmm.
10, and then it's 7, and then as we've seen, 4.5, 5%. But what happens at the 4.5 to 5% mark, you better step on the accelerator because now at that point you're kind of losing a little bit of momentum, you're leaving some opportunities on the table, and you're missing the chance to, in a healthy way, try some different things, invest in some different ways to generate
Yes.
opportunities and see, where that next pay streak is. That is very important. But yeah, you always get us back to that. And I just love it because it's not like you're like, go spend more. No, I mean, you go spend more if you're seeing the good results. But if you're not seeing the improvements, these are things to focus on.
Yeah, and the most important part about it is when there is opportunity to improve the efficiency, that means currently all of your advertising is running less efficiently than it could be. So, like, I don't want to take more of your dollars in those situations, right? Because I'm not going to be able to move the needle as much as I feel is warranted, right? So we're going to stick you at that, 7 to 10%. You'll slowly grow, as long as things are going correctly. But like Mike said, it's those people who pay attention to these things, what they can control, right? And while the advertising is running and doing its thing and it's working effectively, you guys are making these improvements and we strategize at a 10%. And by the end of the year, you're down at 6, you're down at 5.5. But you were still able to hit the growth targets that we set for that 10% rate.
Yep. No, I mean, just great points. Well, moving along. So I want to talk about financing. And I know you and I were kind of talking about this as we were creating our show notes. I don't think that companies are leaning into financing often enough. And, I know,
Especially in 2025.
yeah,
Like,
seriously. And, you've got to think, okay, yeah, sure, rates are high, this and that and the
mhm,
other. But let's think about the affordability aspect. So
mhm.
if I go into a home and I'm telling somebody, we're just using 10,000 as an example. If I'm telling somebody, man, a repair for your home is going to be $10,000. That's big.
They
And we're
just
not asking
canceled
you
their
to,
vacation.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot.
yeah, we're not asking you to eat the elephant. What we are doing is that we've got a number of financing options, and you might be at a home, luxurious home, and the person's got 10K, under their mattress. But when you start to offer these opportunities, maybe they're thinking about you versus some other companies, but because you present this financing opportunity, and maybe it's a 12-month, 18, month, you don't pay anything. You're now borrowing my money, homeowner, for us to complete this work, and then you can pay it back interest free within, 12 to 18 months. Guess what you just got? You just got that smart savvy, owner
Hmm.
that's thinking, man, I've got all this, I can pay this, but I can get the work done using your money, and my money
Hmm.
can go out and it can make money in investments and other things that I want to do, not what I have to do. And then I can pay you back so I can get the work done. So now I'm going to choose your company. And so when we look at, financing approval in general, in this industry, approval odds are pretty low, and that's why you really, if you're thinking 65 to 75% is the typical in the home service industry for approval, that's tough because you want to try to get a little bit higher, but most people, and I'm not knocking green sky. Green sky is just what's very common. We see it on a consistent basis. But I want the listeners to understand there are so many options out there. There are
Are.
so many companies that are eager, that are specific to your industry, that have created different scenarios to where you can lend that money and close that deal, that you can, appropriately, you know, right size the sale into a
Hmm.
monthly payment structure that is affordable to the business or to the homeowner so that you can bring that sale in. And when you're
It's
starting to look at these different options, and let's say you've got, two lenders instead of just one. Well, now what if you just increased your odds to 80% on
exactly.
approval? That's
Hmm.
massive. I mean, these
Hmm.
are big differences. And when we talk to, different businesses, and this happens quite often in the conversation, they're not really thinking about financing and they haven't been educated on the appropriate way
Hmm.
when to present it and how to present it to the homeowner. And if you understand that maybe you're not doing it, maybe your competitor is, maybe they're not, and now that's your opportunity. But this is just another scenario of like learn about financing options, talk to different companies out there, and improve your overall closing rate and your revenue because of it.
And I'm telling you, when and if you start doing the ride-alongs or using the AI to help you, one of the things you'll notice is the big difference between your best salespeople and your worst salespeople is how they address financing, right? The
Yeah.
people who have it smooth, it's integrated into the sales system, and they are speaking about it in the same ways that, and people are going to get the wrong sense of this, but think about the car salesman, think about the realtor. They aren't talking about the cost of the car. They're talking about what is a manageable payment for the
Yes.
home, right? So, like, can you afford $300 a month? Can you afford $600 a month? What is reasonable for you, your family, your finances? And they are not selling like the $50,000 car. They want to say $50,000 as little as possible, right? They want to say 497 per month. Um, there's a reason for that. And it's good and bad, right?
Mhm.
I'm on both sides of the financing. It's like we are in somewhat of a debt crisis, but what that means is the consumer has been trained to utilize this behavior, right? So think of how everything is a subscription model now. Nobody is paying like full price at the time of purchase for very many things in life these days. It is all put across time. And so you just become one of those things that they're very used to.
Yep. Absolutely. No, I mean, you're so right. And there's so many different scenarios where the financing's beneficial,
Hmm.
saving money or making things affordable. Those are the two ways that I look at those scenarios. So next is, the cancellation rate, which we hate to say, or the resend. So essentially, we've always said this is a 5% or less. If it starts creeping above, 5%, this is something that should be evaluated at minimum on a monthly basis.
Hmm.
Your folks are going out, and if you start to see cancellations that are assigned to a specific rep, I've seen this in the past. Typically, it's because they were they got out or they overbid essentially on something. Someone came in behind them. Maybe there's too long of a backlog before you can get to somebody to get it installed. And just a reminder. I mean, you're not getting you're not getting paid until that's installed. So, you might get a percentage up front to hold the job, but you've got to get the rest of that funds on installation. So if your backlog's too long, you really have to understand that. If this is consistent to where you're being pushed out too far and you're seeing a rise in cancellation, then you need
Hmm.
to try to do what you can to get, more crews out there, get everything installed so you can get that revenue. 5% is pretty natural. I mean, you're going to have people that are going to
Hmm.
kind of change their mind. It does take a specific skill set, either in the office or with that sales rep to kind of save that, job, talk through it. There's a buyer's remorse. So don't have these blank timeframes where, you go out and you sell them, right? Everyone's excited, homeowner's excited. You leave.
Hmm.
Well, an hour after you're gone, they're probably having nervous concerns, regrets, whatever. So,
Hmm.
I mean, I like a little 24-hour, nudge, excited to move forward with this, can't wait,
Hmm.
this is where we have, and then touch points along the way. And there's some really great CRMs out there, Service Titan as an example, that have these touch points kind of programmed in so that you aren't getting a high cancellation rate. So just something really to be more front of mind, because after you did everything, you got out there, you ran the appointment, you sold the deal, you got the contract signed, and then they cancel.
Hmm.
That's, you just don't want to see it. So,
Lift
keep
your
that front of
wings.
mind. I mean, communicate. That's probably one of the biggest situations for me. So, now we'll go into like a revenue per lead. I'm going to keep this one kind of soft, and this is $2,400. It's only because it's part of a sample that we're going to run through an example. But you have to monitor your revenue per lead. It's incredibly important. It's a great way to kind of understand the health. What was your investment to generate this opportunity, and then how much money are you bringing back? Each time you go out there. So just something to kind of track as you go. Again, $2,400, per revenue per lead is what we're going to use in our scenario. Uh, Sales cycle. This is one that it can
It's
become
very
sensitive.
industry specific,
Yeah,
firstly.
it is
Yeah.
very industry specific. I know we're using foundation repair as our example. It's typically 14 days or less. You've gotten out there, you ran the appointment, you did the inspection, you provided your bid. You're following up along the way. And so, we talk about all these different touch points, and you can't just like give up. If you didn't get the close, right when you were there, then this has to be very well thought out and methodical. And you should have systems in place that have a very specific cadence. And this is a piece that we're going to walk through. Anthony's going to give you some great tips, but you can't just give up. You've gotten this far. You did all the heavy lifting. Now it's just kind of massaging, getting it across the finish line. Understanding that there are very specific touch points that need to happen if you didn't get the close in the house. And then the final KPI that we'll talk about, and this is again very industry specific. It's gross margin. If you're out and you're selling all these jobs and you're super excited because your top line looks great, but your bottom line looks awful, maybe you don't have a good gross profit margin set in there. So this is something that is incredibly important. We talk about it like HVAC and similar trades are, they're 50 to 55%, which is awesome. Roofing typically ranges a little bit lower. It's very competitive in nature. There's a lot of, subcontracting that goes into that. And that can kind of harm things too. That's, between like a 20 to 40%. But when you're thinking about all of this, it is so important to ensure that your business is making money.
Hmm.
And, we mention gross margin because you need to keep an eye on discounts. Are your reps going out? Are they discounting too much?
Hmm.
Are you getting callbacks? Are you getting warranty claims? All of these things count in here, and this is so incredibly important. So when you're out there, you're quoting the job, ensure that you're leaving enough in that gross margin that you can protect yourself from anything that could kind of come down the road.
Yeah. And one of the ways to do it, so I'm not like super optimistic about this way of thinking, but if you're going to do like heavy discounts or you're trying to like, make this particular month, so you're willing to come down on price, what some of our partners do is you cut that out of the commission. So if you want to discount this job by this additional amount past what we allow as a company, like principal, then you can do that to close the deal, but do not cut out your gross margin for that. Cut out their gross margin for it. They're going to make a little less money, but they're able to close that deal.
Yep. No, that's a great point.
Right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the sales reps best practices. So I want to try and help arm you guys with ways that you can like leverage your position to be more successful towards your end goal. Right. So these are must do's. Okay. I do want you to look at these like for leadership, for owners that are listening, make these standards because it will change the effect that it ends up having on your business. So first, and honestly, one of the most important, I do believe, is the impression that you are leaving. So make sure you're dressed professionally. Think branded, polos or button downs. Make sure you are showered and stay smoke free. This one is somewhat contentious. You've got these people that are, on the road all the time. When I was a road warrior myself, I can tell you, as a tobacco user, I did smoke. And I'm certain that it probably cost me some deals when I was doing that. Odors is one of those like kind of visceral reactions type of things. And if there's an odor somebody does not like, they're probably not going to like you, right? So cut that out. Wait until after your work day. Why does that matter? It builds trust. Like impressions, people talk about the first impression all the time. There is, tenets of psychology that are involved with that. So make sure that the impression that you're leaving builds trust. Another note I had in my notes is neutral pants and leave your coat in the truck.
Yes.
A courtesy call 20 minutes out. So a lot of the time, because you guys have so many stops to make in the day, the exact time of your arrival can sometimes be skewed, right? Maybe you would be getting there 10 minutes early, 10 minutes late, any of that. A courtesy call or text 20 minutes before your arrival, or if your arrival time is going to change whatsoever, it really does help kind of ground the homeowner and prepare them for your arrival, right? So it puts them in that frame of mind, whatever questions that they may have been preparing for your inspection, they start to think about ahead of time. It kind of speeds up the appointment in a lot of ways when you get that process started with that text. It's an easy thing to do, and you can also kind of program out a script to make sure that you guys are, making it uniform, hitting the same thing every time.
Yeah, that was one of the big ones. I wanted to make sure I shared just personal experience. We own a home. Wife and I get a lot of stuff done here. Typically it's not necessarily by choice. It's because we have to get these certain things done. And worked with a variety of companies from, very big professional, getting automated text messages. You can view, your serviceman on the map, before they're coming to your house, and you got all these great warnings to the polar opposite. And I'll just say, like, I have multiple dogs. My wife and I, on occasion, if we know that someone is coming to the home to work on something or to provide us with an estimate, we're working remotely. When we get a 2 or a 4 hour block of when someone's going to show up, we need advance notice. Or our dogs are going to be going nuts. We could be in the middle of meetings. I'm thinking about, like, what about these homeowners that, they have their kids, they've got, different things going on. Just be considerate.
Or they
It
have
would
errands to
mean
run.
so
Maybe they need
much.
to.
And, I just think about, like, calling somebody, hey, Mrs. Smith, this is Mike Stiers. I'm on my way, to your home. I'm about 20 minutes out. Just want to give you a call just in case there was anything you had to wrap up. Any other, ideas that you had or whatever. And, look forward to seeing you here in a few. It means so much. To show up unannounced is
Hmm?
like, it doesn't get you off on the right foot. And,
Yes.
I know that that's always a big frustration, and I'm forgiving because we work in this space. You get it, Anthony, but and obviously, our listeners, sometimes when we're living it, we're not as sensitive to it. So, hey, I have an easy pain point. Everybody out there that's ever been waiting on a cable company that's going to show up, within a 4 to 6 hour block, and then they just
Hmm?
randomly don't make it during that block. How infuriating is that? So communicate, because sometimes a previous appointment could go a little bit long, especially if you're getting to sign a deal. I mean, we're all going to celebrate
Yes.
that. But the homeowner that you're going to see doesn't give a crap about what's going on in your day. They have one problem. The appointment's on the schedule. You're supposed to be here within this time period. So just have the consideration. So, listeners, talk to your sales reps. This is something that you should really pepper in there. Call on the way. And, we've found that now, homeowners do appreciate the text as well. So if
Hmm.
you've got something automated with your CRM, that's typically just as good. I always like calling, because then when you get to the door, they know you. They kind of
Yes.
feel good about it. So
And I'm telling you, like when you start doing these things, you're going to notice that people like you more. People are more willing to close business with you.
people do
All
business
these
with people that they
tiny
like.
little things, they all add up.
Yep.
So, last one, also super important, guys. Arrive on time or 5 minutes early. If you are going to be late, because we do understand, like you're at an appointment before this, and you're gonna probably have an appointment after this a lot of the time. And the amount of time that it takes to get through everything that a homeowner wants to address before committing, like it fluctuates. We understand that. I'm sure that your next homeowner can understand that too if you give them the opportunity. Please tell them if you are running behind with enough notice. Like if that way you're not racing to finish up whatever appointment you're on, because what if you just ended up, shooting yourself in the foot and you don't get this sale? But now you're also tardy to the next one and you didn't give them a heads up,
Yep.
right? So you could end up shooting yourself twice. Uh, Arrive on time or 5 minutes early. And if you are like, it's the moment you know that you're not going to be able to arrive 5 minutes early, let the homeowner know.
Without a doubt.
So there's some improvement that I can help point you guys to. Um, uh, the during the pre-appointment stage, get your customer service reps to send a confirmation email with introduction for that sales rep that's going to be coming to the home. You can, we have some partners that have done a really good job with this, and there are some features in different CRMs that allow you to kind of build out a profile and make it very automated that, hey, Jonathan is going to be the one going to this house. This appointment time is at this. We're going to send a nice little bio package and an email that introduces you to this sales rep. And you can even have some of those pre-appointment kind of touches that warm up the homeowner to be ready for the inspection.
Oh yeah, and that's
The
so important. I
Mhm.
I want to share, because that was one of the things when I joined the Basement Doctor. Obviously I was assigned with some digital advertising and website stuff, but then when we started getting involved, with the call center, we started to understand that we were missing this white glove kind of treatment. And what we found is that there were some really big organizations in other industries. And I will always say, always look at other industries and look
Mhm.
for companies that you admire. So these companies they had a section, for the team on their website. And within that, they had a picture of the smiling service person in their branded garb. They
Mhm.
had a little video. They had a little bio. You learned a little bit about, okay, Greg's coming out to my house,
Mhm.
and, Greg loves fishing. He's got a few kids. He was, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio.
Mhm.
Outside of this, he's a avid fisherman and a runner. Oh, man, I mean, this is great. Well, then you have links to real case studies that
Mhm.
Greg was involved in, where, you look through these case studies, maybe some of them are really relevant to similar problems that you have. Well,
Mhm.
now I feel comfortable with Greg coming out. I know what Greg looks like. I know that Greg is from Columbus, so he's familiar with everything that's going on. He's a real person. I see Greg's video, so I know how he talks. Now all of a sudden I feel like I know Greg. And now
Mhm.
I see all these case studies where Greg's been involved in these great, these homeowners had similar problems to me. Greg was able to provide a solution. Homeowners happy. There's a real review. Some of these things even have testimonial videos. I mean, like And I'm just giving you examples because it was a passion project for me. And I saw the difference. So that
Hmm.
when the call center would send out this link and say, "Hey, Greg's coming out to your house. If you want to, you can go to Greg's bio and check all this stuff out." All of a sudden, the homeowner's super excited. It was greasing the skids.
Exactly.
It's such an opportunity, for the CSRs to set you up for success.
Just one more note on that pre-appointment stage. Look to confirm that both decision makers will be there. It is a tactic to get in front of the objection. If you're doing a single leg appointment, know going in that you're doing a single leg. You have to do them sometimes.
Yep.
One thing that I've seen people utilize is we're in the technology age. If you know that, like, they say, oh, I need to talk to my husband before I make the decision. Oh, I need to talk to my wife before I make the decision. You can record a nice little 5-minute recap of your entire appointment. Say, these are the areas that we reviewed. This is the repair that I think is necessary. Here is why. And this is what we're proposing for you. Do a nice little recap, because chances that you'll be able to run out there again and get in front of both people is slim to none. If
Yep.
that was in the cards, they would have booked that appointment time to begin with. Chances are, if they're doing a single leg, it's because there's some urgency. So that means that they're even more primed to be a buyer a lot of the time. They're going to buy from somebody, right? But they do have this kind of natural out that says, I can't make the decision in front of you right now. I need to consult. But you still have that, weapon in the room when they are having that conversation, which is that recording, which gets to introduce you to the other person in the home.
Yeah, that's such a great tip. And what a great way. I mean, like the I hate one legs, and I know
I hate them
all of our
too.
sales reps hated one legs because you need the decision makers there. But we live in a totally different world from when that rule was created, and
Yep.
it's highly unlikely. But that is such a great tip. It's a personal message. It's human. It's humanizing you. It's increasing the relevancy. And it's a reminder to the homeowner that you already spoke with too of exactly
Hmm.
what you saw and what the proposed solution is.
Yeah, and it's another opportunity to leave something there that makes them like you, right? Like it's much more than a business card. It's much more than that inspection sheet, right? So the next stage is the arrival stage. So make sure that you are arriving in branded assets in general. So a branded vehicle really does help. Unmarked vehicles pulling up to the house is not the same as that nice, polished, poppy branded van or truck. And so they know, hey, it's these guys that I have coming out. A clean uniform or a branded polo, which we mentioned before, and then 5 minutes early or on time minimum. And I understand you will be late sometimes, but you're not late if you tell people that the arrival time is different. You know what I mean?
That's
So
right.
just give them that heads up, and don't, be nice about it too. Still apologize. You know what I mean? Um, the next stage is the discovery stage. So, recap the conversation that the homeowner had with the customer service representative. Ideally, your customer service representative, if they did have a fleshed out conversation about the issues that somebody's dealing with, they will leave those little breadcrumbs
Mhm.
in their notes section in your CRM, or on a Google sheet, however you guys are tracking these. Those little bullet points really help to get the ball rolling when the sales rep is in the home. So if there's kind of a an emotional trigger that was spoke about on the phone, like, oh, there's mold in my home, and my baby's getting sick or something, you can show up and have legitimate concern. Nobody wants to see babies sick. It's like, let's
Mhm.
get in here, check this out, make sure that your family is safe, right? You walk in the door ready and urgent and addressing the issue, not asking, so what's going on, right? Like, you already have some information. Arm yourself with that before you start that appointment.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's a big skill set too. And I think that's one, it's funny because we say all these things and our hope is that the listeners are familiar with it. Most of them are business owners at one point in time. They were probably juggling all of the responsibilities. These are these little things that can move the needle a percentage point or two. And, if you've read the CSR's notes, hopefully the CSR took some good notes. You read
Hmm.
the notes, you understand that there's some problems. You get to the home, you already start talking to the homeowner. Now you're familiar with it. It seems familiar, that along with the bio, all of these things, play their parts into building this trust factor and the motivation. Like, we're people and we're doing business with people. So, you're not showing up like you didn't care. Oh, Mrs. Jones, I read the notes and I understand that, you're really concerned about this mold issue. Well, then that's the skill set that segues into, we need to find what's causing this. It's
Hmm.
one thing, I can't just come in here and eradicate this mold, because we could do that. But if I'm not getting rid of the problem or the source, this is going to be a repeated problem. Well, now you have this level of trust. You are the
Hmm.
expert. This is something that you're familiar with. So now your solution will be more trusted. It's these small little
Hmm.
pieces. And that's why it's like, man, if you need to make yourself a little card that you're looking
Yeah,
at,
cheat
before
sheet.
you run in, or like a little cheat guide that you're always referring to, because this is what changes you from, average to, or even potentially below average, up to above average. And everybody loves an above average sales representative.
Absolutely. So during the inspection phase, one thing that I noticed is I'm not sure how many businesses in a particular market arm themselves well enough in the inspection assets. So a lot of times, and all of you will be guilty of this because most contractors started out being their own salesperson, right? So all of you did this, but you will use your hands and you will use your imagination and you will get these clients to visualize things that you can't see because it's like under something, right? It's like behind this wall, it goes like this, and you've got this thing, and like they're doing all these hand symbols and like going crazy. It would be nice if you had some visual assets that show them what is underneath that concrete right there. It's like, hey, this is where that latches into this part, and we would, remove this much of the concrete, go down into your ground. We're going to put this product in here, and they can see everything and visualize it. It's
Yeah.
also a nice little cheat code to making sure that people stay on script for, like what you want the presentation to be like for the homeowner. If you give them these assets and they use them, then your that presentation will be more uniform every time.
Yeah.
So
No,
there.
and I just wanted to share on this aspect, because this is something that it's new. It's obviously going to be new to the listeners. It's even new, to our agency. It's something that I'm kind of exploring. I'm always obviously looking for new technology. I know you are as well, Anthony. This is something that I believe will aid contractors. It was a friend in our network that suggested, hey, you should probably talk to these guys. They've invented something really cool. So, shameless plug here. It's called TrueCast.io. So what this is something that had been used internally for like HVAC technicians, where, these HVAC, you can't send your top guy out on every job. And you've got, a number of, junior techs, not necessarily senior, they don't have the years of experience and certifications, but you can't run them out on every service call. Or, homeowner calls in, they're thinking about using your company, never, worked with them before. So you send out your junior, they do an inspection. Well, what these guys do is they plug up to like a device or like a GoPro, and without, downloading anything, it seamlessly casts through a browser. So you could have your senior tech sitting back watching this inspection. They take the cover off, the furnace, and they're looking at the lights and whatever. And, what they showed us is how quickly the senior is able to say, okay, this requires XYZ. You got those
Hmm.
components on your truck. This should be an easy fix. Or, oh, this is going to require something bigger. We're going to have to schedule this. Now we know the pieces and the parts that we're going to require. We can estimate the total hours that are going to go into this repair. Now you made a much better experience. So either you can fix it right there, or you have a little bit better feel about what it is. It's a similar scenario. And I was thinking about this because this is like kind of where you're going on the inspection. Often you're dealing with a homeowner that's not going to get down and crawl around in a crawl space, or they can't get
Yes.
up in the attic, or they can't see what's going on the roof. And, you can make a video and you can show them, but these guys, I was talking to them, I'm like, man, what would be really crazy you've got your device, whether it's a GoPro that's, beaming whatever, but if the homeowner can now watch from your iPad that you hand to them, or on their device or whatever, make it convenient. But now you're doing this inspection and you're talking to them real time. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, what's even cooler about that is we actually record all of this stuff. And then it goes into this bank that can then be, pulled back later if you needed to look for notes in the inspection, specific problems. I'm like, this is crazy. There's so much. So for our listeners out there, probably something that you might want to consider depending on what industry you're in, but it could be
Mm-hmm.
incredibly relevant to your business. And I'm thinking even for the homeowner's experience, especially when you're out there proposing a big ticket, if you're the company that comes out, you hand the iPad to Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, have a seat over here, on your couch. I'm going to go and provide a thorough inspection. You're going to walk through this with me, but just relaxing on your couch. For me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, man, talk about convenience and amazing. And
White
there's so many
glove.
different scenarios where the eye can't see. These guys were like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's a great idea because we could actually, take one of the video cameras that we put down in these pipes underground and show the homeowner, right there as we're doing the inspection.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's awesome. It's a differentiator, and
It really is, and it's one of those convenience things. So for me, in my mind, it has a lot of potential for helping in those very high ticket jobs. So the one where they like the differentiator means so much more, right? It's not about the cost to that person; it's about the contractor, and you need that edge, pun intended. Again, that's two. It's two, Mike. I
there,
got two.
there you go. All right, everybody, take a shot.
All right. So during the solution building stage, or like structuring your bid, remember to tie each element of the service to the concern of the homeowner. Try not to use contractor language. Think like a homeowner and talk about the concern that you're solving. Right? It's not a shopping list. Right? It is it is an answer. Right? It is the fix, right? It's not a service or a product. Justification of the services need to remain based on the homeowner's needs. So they will be using very particular language that you can kind of reference in the way that you're responding and kind of outlining what you propose should be done with the home. On the estimate reveal stage, I actually like this for most companies who offer a product or service. This is not a home service tip as so much as it is if you sell anything tip, right? Have a good, better, best option on one sheet. Tell them that this is good, better, best, right? The best means that you can have the best peace of mind, that you will have the best product, and like just emphasize it as that and let them decide which one that they want, right? It really does help because there are times where the reason you didn't get the job is because you only gave them one option and you don't realize that when you leave, right? If you start implementing this, measure that, see how it affects your closing ratio. You'd be shocked. And this is just a tip to people, because I do see this a lot, especially in waterproofing, that there are some people who will offer a Band-Aid solution because they are dealing with somebody who does not have a lot of disposable income at the moment. Things are really tight for them. And so they offer the non-complete solution so that they can help at this very moment. If you are doing that, first of all, against medical advice type of document there, because if you're offering waterproofing and you really just mitigate one of the walls, if the problem, persists and makes it around to the other side of the house and starts coming back in, and you did not kind of warn the homeowner that this could happen, it's a potential, then you might end up with a bad review. They might complain about you. It could cause, bad PR in a sense. But on the other end of it, if you did give them this patchwork solution, this Band-Aid, mark it in your calendar, put it in your CRM that next year during this season, go and tell them to do the permanent solution now. It's like, hey, before this persists again, because if the water does come back in, you're going to have to get the exact same thing that you did over here done to this wall over here now. And now you're just adding cost on top of cost on top of cost, right? Hopefully, whatever they were dealing with that year, they were able to work through, talk to them some more about the financing, and emphasize that you want this to be a permanent thing that they are not having to worry about every time that it rains.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the financing. When you talk about like a good, better, best option, I'll just give a super simple scenario in the waterproofing. Okay, so you go in and the house needs waterproofing, and there's no question about the system, right? So the system's going in. Well, now you have some options in regards to the sump pump. You've matched it to what you believe the gallons per hour need to be to sufficiently get the water out, but that's your standard sump pump. So then your option number two is the sump pump combo, right? So sump pump one goes down, well, you got a backup and it can get running. Well, then you have the combo plus battery backup. In the instance that power goes out, do you want to be protected all of the time? So that's your best
Mm-hmm.
scenario. And what's really crazy, and that you mentioned it, financing. So
Mm-hmm.
financing increases the average dollar per ticket because you can do things to make it oriented to their budget. You can, stretch things out over a longer period of time so they can get the best solution, which gets ultimately your best review because it gets the
Yep.
best performance, the best longevity, the
Mm-hmm.
best warranty. It's the best experience, for the homeowner. If you never mentioned financing, you're selling a single sump pump and a waterproofing system if you're lucky and you're getting out of the house. Or the guy that you're going against, has come in and he's mentioned options. So they like the solution, they like the guy, and guess what? He talked about financing and he gave them options that were affordable to their budget. So they feel like now they made the choice between the good, better, and best, and they made it according to their budget on the payment cycle. So these
Mm-hmm.
are all just important scenarios. And it's funny because it is a complete system and all of
Mm-hmm.
these things are related to each other and they all compound and obviously improve your overall performance too.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you for adding that, Mike. Oh, yes. And the note that I had for that section is not just in that situation that I said, but when you do the good, better, best, when you do your pitch, but present your promo offer and your financing side by side with your bid. Do not make it an afterthought. Do not wait to see how they react to the cost of the service and then bring it in. It is already seamlessly integrated into the way that you structure your estimate. So, um, another really important one is asking for the close. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Do the direct close question. This one's very simple, but it's very powerful. Based on the information that I have provided you today, is there any reason that you wouldn't want to move forward with the proposed solution? It's that simple. Whatever their objection is, they have to come out with it now, right?
Yeah.
And then for people who are willing to sign with you on same day, if you have a promotion that like incentivizes them to close the deal, because it does really help your business if you close it right then and there.
Mhm.
So, an incentive can help. Same day bonus, such as a gift card, right? Oh, we're willing to give you $50 Amazon gift card or something like that if you can commit to getting on the schedule today. Um,
Yeah. Well, and one of the really interesting things that comes forward in that, so and I've done plenty of ride-alongs and had the conversations. I sat in all those sales meetings for all those years. As soon as you ask, now you've set the table. Now you just sit silently. So you've
mhm,
asked. So good solution. They like you, they trust you, everything's great. But along that process, this is where it comes out like, well, how soon do you think you guys could get this done? Well, that's sometimes kind of a scary thing too. If you've got room, then it's something you can move up and you can get in there quick. This is where you can help with that close because maybe this is an urgent job that needs to close really quickly. The
mhm,
homeowner's showing some urgency. Now you can call back to home base, see if you might be able to move some things around and get the close. Now you've just become a hero once again. So,
yes.
and these are just, really important things. They come with experience. It's just understanding, really how to handle, objection and, questions and potentially like adversity sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a way to work through these scenarios, but, if there's two people that are equal with the solutions, they like you and everything else, and then it comes down to, well, the homeowner has urgency and you're scheduled out 3 or 4 weeks, and this other company can come in and they can do it in a week or two. I don't know. Is there flexibility in the schedule? Can you move things around? Can they close right now? Can you take a
Mhm.
deposit? Those are certainly scenarios that you should look at.
Absolutely. The very last step or stage in this process is your follow up. And to be honest with you, we see it every day, every week, every year. People do not leverage their follow up as much as they should. It's one of the reasons why we really do like CRMs that kind of take the guessing and the execution out of your hands. The House Call Pros or the Service Titans, things like that, where you have a cadence that is structured into the software and kind of forces these touches after the appointment. But a good benchmark to set. And by the way, you can do more than this.
Oh yeah.
I lean more on the, I don't want to say harass people, but go a little heavier than this. But this is a good benchmark to aim for. So make sure that you call on day 3 after. Uh, CSR calls on day 7, an email on day 14, a postcard by day 30, and then you can do like device ID, display, and CTV throughout that entire process, just reminding them who you guys are, why it's important to get these services done. And the result in this will be that you close more of the jobs that you've already bid. If you're not able to get that one call close, getting those multiple touches, reminders, for people to revisit this in their mind, because what can happen a lot of the time is they call you because it rained. Like this is for waterproofing, whatever trigger caused them to observe this issue. It will happen again, right, in the future, and you want to have your touch try to fall around that urgency again. So don't do it just once. Don't do it just 2 times. Continue to do it up into a certain point. I like to say like 90 days is where you're chasing, and we have different kind of programs in a sense we like to call like rehash. You've already pitched to these people. They potentially still need the work, or they went with one of your competitors. So try and close those deals as often, as frequently as you can. But there is still value going out even sometimes to like 6 months, depending on the industry that you're in. Because imagine the summer just wrapped up or something, and you've got to make it through part of the winter, and then spring comes and it rains again, right? They're going to have that problem again, and you will still have that bid out there. And so, and you've already made the introduction, and you've already paid for the lead, and you've like so much of the groundwork has already been laid that it becomes an even more favorable opportunity for you. So make sure
Oh,
that you
without a doubt.
are chasing those down, get to a cadence, get your language down so you aren't annoying, right? I do say have enough touches that maybe it could feel like pestering, but remember, you are here to offer a solution, right? You are not the problem. You are the
That's right.
solution.
No, you're the advocate for the
Mhm.
homeowner. And you've obviously been called out, you provided a bid, unless they've gone with another company to have the solution taken care of. On the home service side, obviously
Mhm.
on the home improvement side, when we're talking about interior and exterior remodeling, these aren't
Different.
necessities, they're
Mhm.
luxuries. These do have a longer buying cycle. These do have, typically a higher average ticket. They have
Mhm.
more touch points. I know we talk about this on a pretty regular basis. There's a longer sales cycle, so you do have the ability. You should, craft a high touch program that keeps your company top of mind. And because they've already reached out to you, you have the opportunity and grace
Mhm.
to be in constant contact with them.
Yeah. And I think everyone kind of exaggerates how annoying an email or a text can be. Calls, those things are freaking annoying. If you're blowing people up with calls, and my phone is constantly ringing, that does upset me. If I get a text message that's some reminder, think of like your doctor's appointments and stuff. Like sometimes they send you like 7 of them. It doesn't upset me because it's a little swipe and it's gone, right? The phone calls like ring in my ear. Maybe I'm like watching a movie. You've interrupted me. It ruined the whole movie for me, you know, because I'm that sensitive. No, I'm just kidding. Uh, but yeah, just don't overthink it. Get in touch with these people. And if they like leave them an option to out, if like you do get annoying, they can press a button and you're gone. So it's totally fine.
Yep. No, I think that's fantastic. Yeah, so we'll move into what we'll call math in motion. So really, what I want to try to do is provide you with a scenario, and this is something that we'll also make a bit more transparent. I'll make sure I put something together on the website that we can reference here in the near future as well. But this is really going to give a baseline funnel. Every business is going to be a little bit different. We have to give some baseline numbers and KPIs to show you really the benefit of this exercise. So we're going to start off with 100 leads. So we're looking at a month scenario, 100 leads. The average cost per lead is $250. So now in this scenario, you've spent $25,000 to generate these 100 leads. We know looking at our different KPIs, because we're kind of bringing in some different KPIs here that we've gone over in previous episodes, you want to set 90% of the real leads to appointments. And it's a combination of phone calls and form fills. If you're active in your chat, bringing those in and setting those as well. So you got a 10% runoff there. So now we're down to 90 leads. Now, out of those 90, we want to run 95% of those. So that's going to bring us down into 85. So now we're at 85, run appointments. Out of these, we want to go and give a bid to 90% of these. And so that's going to take us into, 76 opportunities. Now we've bid 76 opportunities out of the 100 leads that came in. That next portion is going to be your close percentage. We're benchmarking that at 30%. Obviously, like we say, every industry is a bit different, job type's a little bit different. But out of the 76 bids, we close 30% of those. That's 23 sales. So we got 23 sales. We're going to go with an average ticket of 10K. It's $230,000. So we know we've got $230,000 in revenue there, and we're going to work into some additional scenarios, which these are KPIs that you should also be measuring. So we're going to look at your revenue per lead. So out of the 230,000 in revenue, we know that we started with 100 leads. So essentially, that's $2,300, per lead back to your business. And you're going to have to establish your industry benchmarks. You might need to get granular, because if you're a company that does concrete lifting and leveling, but then you also do, crawl space encapsulation, basement waterproofing, foundation repair, all of these things are different. We talked to all the roofers. The roofers will then go and sometimes they're doing gutters. And so there's drastic differences in the cost of these items. But you want to break that down so that okay, generating these leads brings this much back to our business based on the way that we're performing. So then we want to look at the return on ad spend. So we've got $230,000 in revenue. We know that we invested $25,000 in that. So that gives us 9.2, so $9.20 back for every $1 we put in the machine. That's killer. I mean, because we're saying 10x is like obviously what everybody's screaming from the rooftops. That's a big, big goal. Super healthy. But, obviously 9.2 on that. So this is why we establish those KPIs. You can see how it's healthy. It's a healthy cost per lead. Run through all these benchmark scenarios on your KPIs, your overall performance, and what you're bringing back to home base. Very, very healthy.
One thing to point out, Mike, that I think is worth for this exercise. This is what it looks like if you paid for every single lead that came through the door in that month.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you're getting a 9.2 to 1 for every paid opportunity that you have coming. And
that's a great point. And obviously every scenario is a little bit different because, you could get a ton of referrals, if you're a well-established business with a concerted focus on your referral business, then that's really going to help lift it. It lowers your cost per lead, increases your close percentage, your average ticket's typically higher. So as Anthony mentioned, we'll look at this and say, okay, this is if we've paid for everything, and this is our average, and then what our performance is. So I just want to walk through some quick little scenarios so you can understand. In the previous episodes, we've talked about a 2% incremental increase. That 2% improvement. It's something that you should always strive for. We're going to use our benchmarks, and then we're going to show the improvement from there. So if your close rate goes from 30% to 32%, now you're seeing 24 sales, and that's a lift of $10,000. So in that month, that 2%
Every month
close
too.
rate,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
10,000
in a
per
month,
month. Yeah.
in a month. So now your revenue went from 230K to 240K just by improving your close percentage by 2%. So you can do it. Then let's look individually at an average ticket scenario. So this one doesn't have as much of an impact, because you have to think of the grand scheme of things. But if you were able to, lift by 2%, you went from 10K average ticket to 10,200, off of that original 23 sales, then it's an additional 4K. So
Hmm.
when you look at that scenario, you spent 25K making this small improvement of an additional $200 average per sale. And honestly, this is an easy number for a business owner to change, because the
Yep.
ways that you grow your business is you generate more opportunities, you increase your price, or you add additional services. So in this situation, you can just go in and increase your price by 2%. And, it's not really going to affect your close percentage, trust me. But in that 1 month, that gave you an additional 4K. So pretty sweet scenario. Now, on top of that, we've got the Amazon effect. And, I like to refer to it as a snowball effect. If you were able to do both of these scenarios, so 2% on your close rate, 2% on your average ticket, you've got 24 sales at 10,200 per. That lifts you from that 230K bench to $244,800. So a revenue lift in 1 month of $14,800 by making some 2% improvements. So
Hmm.
these are certainly scenarios that, when measured, when you're, effectively coaching, you're managing, you will see these improvements. And again, like, we have pretty high benchmarks. They're, if your scenario is a little bit lower, think about what that improvement looks like for yours. We give you these benchmarks because it's easier for us to actually just give you a scenario that you can go into. So for me, it's incredibly exciting, because then I think about, take your $14,800 improvement and carry that through 12 months. You'll feel pretty good at the end of the
Exactly.
year.
Exactly. So I do have a pro tip for this week. I'll try to move a little bit quicker on this one, just because we're already running a little long. These KPI ones, there's so much information, and we want to make sure that
So
we get it
much.
to you guys. But my pro tip this week is rehash for found revenue. So you would have heard me say that a little bit earlier, that rehash, that chasing down opportunities that you've already bid on. So how we define this is it's a structured follow-up on every unsold proposal 48 hours to 90 days old. Contractors that run full programs report 7 to 10 extra close rate points. So did kind of construct a blueprint to help you guys, work in and integrate this strategy into your guys' companies. The cadence blueprint is the sales rep will call on day 3 with a fresh angle, right? Be inquisitive, find out like what additional information may be needed before they want to move forward with the project. The idea here is to just get them to commit to moving forward, right? The CSR can check in on day 7, the person that they had spoke to in that initial call. An automated email series kicks in for days 7, 14, and 30, showing off case studies for the issue that they're dealing with and the solution that you guys are offering, and present any promos or financing offers in that email to try and make it more palatable for them. Marry all of these efforts with a postcard campaign as well. Get into their mailbox, show them some before and after photos. Then tie in the device ID display and connected TV ads. So that's going to make sure when they are, browsing and checking out things online, that a nice little reminder starts showing up in the uh, in like the ads feeds that each website has there. But also if they're watching, their favorite streaming television show, you can have a nice branded ad that reminds them that firstly that they need this service, that you guys are a good company to do business with, and it puts it nice and big and bold in the middle of their house. And then a manager reviews that rehash pipeline every week. So I can't tell you how many companies tell me all the time that they just do not do anything similar to this whatsoever. And like I can see it with all of them, their eyes go, oh my gosh, why not? Right? It just makes so much sense. Do not let these opportunities just die on the vine. Get somebody who's dedicated to doing this particular job. It does take a kind of unique skill set. Mike, I do think we go in more detail on rehash for an episode in the future, because it's such a powerful program. And I know that there are going to be listeners that aren't utilizing it, or some that aren't doing it quite as effectively as they could. Right. So I want to show you guys an ROI scenario for this. Monthly spend on postcards, remarketing, email, CTV, all the different legs of this strategy. Let's say $5,000. And that's actually pretty reasonable for this. This isn't one of those big costly endeavors because it's a smaller pool of people. It's just the people that you've already put bids out to. So getting in front of that total amount of people, it's not going to be insanely expensive. So in this example that I drew up, we're looking at 67 unsold bids that we're going to chase after. This is after the 30% close. So these are the ones you did not close from those bids that you put out. One recovered sale at your average sale of $10,000 is revenue of $10,000. For your $5,000 investment, that's already a 2-to-1 ROI on these efforts, right? If you're able to sell 10% of the unsold bids, just 10% of the unsold bids, that is $70,000 in additional revenue, or a 14-to-1 ROI. So you're getting $14 back for every one of those $5,000 you invested in this. And probably one of my favorite metrics in this is there's a percentage of unsold jobs that you have bid that are going to your competitors. So think of this piece of it too. You are taking back market share that was probably being surrendered to your competitors. Make sure that you're tracking all these things. Here's some good kind of benchmarks to set for this program. Your rehash contact rate, so getting a hold of those customers that you've done estimates for already, you have a goal of reaching them 80%. The close rate on that, you'll have a goal of 10%. The cost per sale, or the cost per rehash sale, a goal of under $400. So your investment for each one of those sales that you close is $400 on average. And then added revenue versus spend is what you want to track. So looking at that ROI calculation, give it that 2-to-1 or 2x or 14-to-1, 14x assessment. And then just a reminder to you guys, these opportunities are like so valuable because of the compounding nature of like everything that you've done along this process. You've already paid for this lead. You've already scheduled it. You've already done the windshield time to get out to their home. You've already invested emotionally in doing your sales pitch. So leaving these unsold bids untouched, it's wasted capital. You've basically surrendered whatever that marketing spend was. Like I was saying before, in a lot of sense, you might have conquested for your competitor. So
yeah, don't give up that opportunity. I mean, I know, we talk about it all the time, and we're really kind of crafting and continuing to enhance, different approaches, rehash, obviously, very specifically, because just going out and visiting with our clients and understanding, just educating them on the different buckets, where people are in the life cycle of a lead, what you're doing with these bids, what your follow-up techniques look like, potentially getting them in touch with a sales manager, maybe getting a different inspector, or sales representative out. When we're looking at all this, these are all scenarios where you've invested so much resources, time and money and, people. And it's like, okay, don't leave it all on the table. Like rehash is something that every company should be doing until, the homeowner says, not interested, went with another
Hmm.
company, not something I'm going to do for whatever reason, and tells you to stop talking to them. So
Hmm.
until then, you have every reason to talk to them. They had you out, they had a problem, or in the case of, renovation and remodeling, they asked you to put a bid out there. You're just following through, until
Hmm.
they say otherwise. So, it's incredibly important. And, I know you and I are very passionate about this. I'm hoping that the listeners, share that very same passion. If you have, questions, we always encourage you to, reach out to us. LinkedIn, is always the easiest way to reach out to Anthony and I. You can always visit greenbombstiers.com, fill out a form or give us a call. Happy to talk to you. But with that, we're going to go ahead and go into our close. So I just want all of our listeners to understand that marketing brings those leads. The call center locks the appointments. Sales team converts. So measure each spoke in that wheel, and then you can predict the revenue before the ink dries. If today's episode helped kind of tighten up your numbers, please, rate the show, follow us, like us, whatever platform. We're pretty much everywhere. I mean, Alyssa, our marketing manager, has us all over the place. It's very exciting. We are asking for your feedback. We are asking for your questions. If you've got questions about these KPI scenarios, reach out to us. Our goal is to continue to evolve this. We're looking forward to doing a deep dive even in the future about compensation plans for your installers. We'll advance these techniques on rehash programs, but just please continue to give us the feedback and the support, and we'll continue making these episodes for you and hope that they make a difference in your business. So with that, thank you for tuning in to the Contractors Edge, and we'll see you soon.